Welcome to the Radio Broadcast, where we play horror, action, drama, and science fiction radio plays. Viewer discretion is advised.
I froze in place looking at my cereal bowl on the dining room table, swirling what was left of the milk, trying to see if I could unearth more of the crispy flakes that would be soggy by now. The room was brightly lit, but dim, if that could even be possible. The sky was overcast, dull, and unappealing. Another sign. The dark clouds tumbled slowly across the sky, blocking every stubborn ray of sunlight that tried to reach the ground. I was already used to weathers like this. I wasn't even planning on wearing my poncho. Lightning would flash, thunder would roar, but it wouldn't rain. Only lucky people got rain. I tried not to make eye contact with her. Instead, I lowered my head and looked at the old wooden table that had been in my family for over 5 generations. I ran my hand over the smooth and sturdy piece of cedar, which had little crusts of dried food here and there, and a stain that had come from my coloring markers a few years ago. My mother came into the dining room and asked casually, like she didn't see her.
Oh, so you guys have decided to be late again?
She must be used to seeing her by now. I wonder if I would ever get used to seeing her, watching her silent and indifferent gaze, never taking her eyes off you. My eyes darted around the room, looking at the old family pictures on the wall, the cracked lamp near the living room, and brightly colored curtains, and breathed in the ever-present smells of perfume, incense, and a dash of rot. I looked back at my bowl as my sister finished her cereal and was taking her bowl to the kitchen sink. I swirled the milk one last time to see if there was more hidden bits in it. Nothing. There were still only those 3 pieces. This was going to be a bad day. I scooped up the pieces with my spoon and ate them, before draining the milk in 3 quick swallows and headed to the kitchen. Ow! Fuck! I stubbed my toe on the door frame while leaving the kitchen. Another sign. Maybe I shouldn't go to school, I thought. But it was already too late for me to pretend like I was sick. Fuck it. Maybe I'll just get run over by a car, I thought. The macabre prospect brought a smile to my face. All that was missing was a black cat.
What are you still doing here?
My mother asked this time with a little bit of anger in her voice. I quickly put on my socks and shoes and picked up my bag. My hair was messy, had always been messy, and not like the boy band messy that was cute and rebellious, but the stubborn messy that had just never stayed down. Across the street, the yellow monstrosity that served as the school bus picked up a few students. Normally, we would just wait for it to get to our side of the street, to board the bus and go to school. But we had taken to walking to school ever since we had, begun to see her. It was for the best. Our mornings would be without taunts. Well, at least until we got to school. From the bus windows, students were holding their necks and making fun of us with frightened faces.
Idiots,
my sister said as she looked away. I tried to copy the strides of my sister, the confident way it was that she walked, with her head held high. I would maintain the posture for a few seconds before slouching due to habit or shyness when I made eye contact with the passers-by. No one would ever believe us to be twins if we didn't tell them, though we weren't identical. I was a boy and she was, a girl. There was this likeness that was customary with twins. You would see some resemblances and know we were related, but not quite as twins. My sister Jean was older by 72 seconds. I called her the lucky one. She was a pretty brunette with white sparkling teeth, a perfect face, perfect nose, lovely lips, and athletic. She was even taller than me. I came out 72 seconds after her, the unlucky one, with short, choppy hair that barely passed for black, a wide forehead with a wide nose, large white eyes, and thin lips. I was even shorter and almost stockier than my twin. Where my sister was graceful and elegant, I was clumsy. My sister was the type of person that was instantly noticed in a gathering of people, while I was the indifferent guy, drawing few to no stares at all. The only place where I struck luck in comparison with my sister was in our brains. Jean couldn't exactly be called smart, but you couldn't really call her dumb either. She wasn't good at her math, and she misspelled a lot and sometimes forgot the periodic table, but she worked hard enough and was most times above a C student. As we got to the end of our block, a fat black cat came from under a parked car and hissed at me and continued walking with its litter of 3 kittens.
What?
My sister asked as I burst into laughter. Nothing, I said amidst chuckles. I would have continued laughing if my nose hadn't picked up the smell of rot. And from the way Jean stiffened, I'm sure she picked it up too. We both continued our trek to school silently without ever looking back. As we trudged along, I thought back to that black cat with those 3 black kittens. 3 kittens seemed weird, actually. 5 or 6 seemed the most likely for a litter. But 3? Maybe I was just overthinking this, though. I had come to associate the number 3 with bad luck ever since I was 5. It had first happened with cereal. I was nearly done eating and saw that there were 3 grains suspended in the milk and clumped together. It seemed exciting to little me. And then I called my mom and showed her excitedly. And she, not wanting to dampen my excitement, played along.
Wow, like a 3-leaved clover. 3 must be your lucky number,
She had said, even though it was actually 4 leaves that gave the clover luck. It wasn't. Oh, no, it wasn't. I stayed at the table for minutes, staring at the suspended trio in my bowl, imagining what it would be like to have a lucky number. When I was done daydreaming, I scooped up my clover and ate it. Drank the milk. As I was trying to get off the chair, my foot slipped on one of its pokes, and I struck the edge of the table with my jaw and chipped a tooth and lost another, losing my first baby tooth. I instinctively ran my tongue over the spots where my teeth had been and smiled within myself. The second time had been a few months later, when a family friend visited from overseas and brought my sister and I a pair of colorful parrots as pets. She had also brought clothes and sweets, but what stood out the most were 3 pieces of expensive toffee she gave to each of us, which my mother kept. I licked my lips and ran a dry tongue over my chipped tooth, and the hole left by the missing one, remembering what happened the last time the number 3 stood out for me. Nothing bad happened that day, and nothing happened throughout the entire week. I had begun to think that it was just a coincidence, till my mom gave us the toffee the following week. That same day, my parrot died. It had gotten into a box of detergent and eaten some of the substance. I was the one who found it with foam coming out of its mouth. What baffled me the most was the fact that there was no sign of the cage being opened. My room was far from the laundry room, and the bird was also flightless, so it couldn't have just made it to the laundry room without being noticed. The third time it happened, I was finally sure that it wasn't a coincidence. The number 3 did represent bad luck for me. We just turned 10, and my mother had finally saved enough money to get us some bikes. They weren't expensive, so they looked nothing like the bikes our friends and neighbors had, but they weren't shabby either. She had actually bought them from a husband of one of her friends who fixed bikes for a living. Mine was an oxblood kind of red with dangerous-looking attachments. It originally had 4 gears, but only 3 were working, as he told me. The mention of 3 once again dried my throat. I was reluctant to ride the bike and sat down on the pavement watching my sister ride round the block with our neighbors and friends. I had already told my sister how I felt about the number 3, and she sat with me on the pavement, knowing I wouldn't want to ride. But I could see the longing in her eyes. Before we had our bikes, we had ridden the neighbors' bikes, probably even more than them. Go on, don't let me ruin your first ride, I had said to her.
Are you sure?
She asked.
Okay.
She said after I nodded. Watching her go round and round made me feel left out. So I picked up the bike, holding onto the handlebars aggressively, thinking what to do. I can't get hurt if I don't go too fast, right? I asked myself. So I jumped into the saddle and pedaled softly at first, going at a snail's pace. As my fear began to recede, I picked up the pace, but not going faster than the first gear. After a few minutes of slow riding, I gained enough confidence to switch it over to the second gear. I had barely begun to follow them around the block at an overly moderate speed when the front pedal buckled down and I was sent flying through the air and into the side of a parked car. I had managed to shield my head enough to prevent me from breaking my neck, but I ended up breaking 3 fingers on my left hand and 4 on my right. The fact that none of these things happened to my sister, not even when she engaged in dangerous activities or sports, was enough proof that life was not fair. Some people were just born rich, others were born poor. Some were born beautiful and others ugly. Some people are just lucky, while the rest of us are simply cursed. We got to school just as the bell rang for first period.
Hey, look, it's the Addams family.
An ugly boy shouted across the hall while pointing at my sister and I. The whole hallway exploded into laughter, and Jean turned to the boy angrily and yanked him by the collar. He was an ugly piece of shit with pasty white skin, terrible teeth, and an even uglier haircut.
What a world where the likes of you get to taunt someone like me.
She said while raising a fist. I just looked on while wishing I was the one who confronted the boy. I should be the one protecting my sister, not the other way around. The boy just stood there, visibly frightened, oblivious that he had dropped his books and was shaking like a leaf.
I'm sorry,
he said, blubbering.
Now,
She said, tightening her grip around his neck.
to my brother, too.
I wish she didn't do that,
I'm so sorry.
he said, trying to force the words through his constricted throat.
Good.
My sister said, smiling, before she let him go, and he started running after picking up his books, drawing out another round of laughter from the hallway.
That's better. Now you have a great day.
On our way back from school, I became apprehensive, wondering where the next form of pain would come from. Every sound made my heart jump, and I ensured that the road was totally free before crossing. By the time I saw our street, my head was pounding, and I began thinking that maybe today was just a false alarm. All of a sudden, we hear the screeching sounds of tires. We turned in time to see a car coming straight towards me. I froze in place and could do nothing but watch as the driver managed to correct the car and splash a liquid that looked and smelled like dog urine on me.
Ben,
My sister shouted.
are you okay?
She asked. Never better, I replied, feeling relieved that it had not been something worse. On our way back, she was nowhere to be seen, but immediately upon opening the door, her stench hit me and mingled with the smell of urine. I felt like gagging. She stood at the entrance to the living room with blind white eyes, staring at... It was actually impossible to know where she was looking without pupils. I was about to head towards the staircase to see if her head would move in my direction when our mother came out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron with a nervous smile on her face.
Welcome. How was school?
She didn't let us answer before continuing.
You guys must be hungry. I made food. Go change your clothes and come and eat.
She said all this without looking us in the eye. What was wrong now? I wondered. I need to take a bath first, I said, heading towards the staircase. When I got to the foot of the stairs, I placed a foot on the step and then looked towards the living room to see if she was still looking at me. She had disappeared. I nearly lost my footing and fell back down the stairs when I saw her standing at the entrance to my room. I had hoped it was Jean she was staring at and not me. Seeing her by my room made me wonder what had happened while we were away that made my mom nervous. She stepped away from my door. The sunlight coming from the large window in the hall made her bluish-green skin look gray, and her tattered clothes swayed in whatever breeze it was that was touching it. Her decayed and barely recognizable face was expressionless as she looked at me. She just stood there, the physical representation of death and corruption. I held my breath and slid past her into my room, where I took off my soiled and stinking clothes. She didn't follow me into my room, and I was relieved. I draped a towel around my body and looked at my stocky build. I winked at my reflection and headed towards the bathroom, holding my breath once again, expecting her to still be by my door. I exhaled when I saw that she was nowhere to be found, and walked into the bathroom, happy that my ominous 3 today had been painless. A little bit of luck now and then doesn't hurt. At night, I found it difficult to sleep. The image of my mother's nervous face refused to leave my mind, And the fact that she had followed me up scared me. Was I the chosen one? But I shouldn't be. Was this due to my ill luck? Or was my ill luck due to this? I could hear creaking coming from the staircase, and I stilled my breathing. It wasn't her. She never made a sound when she moved. And besides, I never saw her at night. Only during the day. The creaking became louder and sounded closer. They sounded way too heavy to be my mother or my sister, nor the walking corpse. I sat up and looked towards my closed room door. The thumping of my chest was deafening in my ears. The louder and closer the creaking sounded, the higher up my throat my heart climbed. The creaking stopped just in front of my door, and I prayed silently, hoping that that would be the end of it all. The whole house was silent for a heartbeat. 2 heartbeats. 3, 4, and 5. I finally exhaled, and my heart rate had begun to normalize when a thin line of light shone into my room. The door had opened by just a crack, and the light my mother always kept on in the hallway snuck into my room. The rapid thumps instantly returned to my chest, and my throat felt constricted. The door opened wide enough for me to see who was at the door. Or what. I felt a little bit confused. There was nothing there. Just a shadow that was probably cast by an object in the hallway. I was still trying to think on what could have cast the shadow and how a shadow could open my door when the shadow pushed my door totally open. A small shriek escaped my throat as I saw the towering behemoth that was a swirling mass of blackness, whose stooped back brushed the ceiling. Its eyes were yellow dots that seemed to glow stronger and weaker. It had no nose and a huge gaping hole as its mouth. As it stepped inside my room, its stench hit me with so much force, I nearly blacked out. Her smell was that of rot and corruption, but its stench was that of death, peat, and all things evil. It was beyond foul. Its wide gaping mouth twisted into what looked like a grin. It was the most hideous grin I had ever seen in my life. As it lumbered towards me, my mind flashed back to a time when we were little. We had our own rooms then, but my mother made us all sleep in the same room in the same bed. I remember at night, I would wake up to muttering and the sound of a creaking house. There would be a foul odor in the air, and my mother would squeeze us tight. I would be so scared that I would just shut my eyes and press my little body towards her and mutter along with her, "Ta ri kaba sho wai, ta ri kaba sho wai." She would keep on muttering it till the stench vanished and the house stopped creaking. Then she would pull us all closer and cry for most of the night, making her eyes raw and puffy by morning. As the memory flashed through my mind, I had no idea when I started repeating those words. The stench had vanished and the creaking stopped. I stayed huddled on my bed, afraid to open my eyes. After a while, I had opened them, to see a room that was all but empty, save for my crying mother at the door. This story and all related media is copywritten by RDM Productions, Inc. For use, please contact rdmpfilms@gmail.com. And I hope everybody checks out our website at afradioradio.com